And while you're doing that, we're going to officially kick things off. So, welcome everyone. For those of you who I have not had a chance to meet yet, my name is Tony, and I want to welcome everyone to today's Growth Series webinar on a very, very timely topic. In fact, it has the changes have already happened, but it's not too late. And essentially, we're going to dive into how to keep your emails landing in the inbox. Especially with Google's updated spam policies that took place on February 1st and Yahoo's impending spam policy changes. So let's go over some housekeeping items. And basically, there's two. And they're always asked, the first one at least, which is, are we recording? Yes, we are. We are recording this full session, and we will be making it available without any form fills or anything like that on our blog, probably within a week's time, perhaps in a few days' time. So just make sure that you're subscribed to Mucker.com, and you'll get a monthly newsletter to let you know when this recording has been published. But if you want, you could always check back every few days or so just to see if it's been posted. And then secondly, some of you have already found the Q&A box. And those of you who are familiar with Zoom webinars, that's the place where you could type in your questions at any given point in time. And we'll try to address some of the questions that are in line during our discussions. But if we don't get to your question, have no worries. We'll spare some time at the end for a dedicated Q&A. All right, so housekeeping, that is out of the way. Again, let me introduce myself as well as our guest. My name's Tony. I head up growth here at Mucker, which basically means I have the privilege of working with a lot of very smart founders on their go-to-market and growth strategies. And I cover this particular topic quite a bit on email deliverability, and especially in the context of outbound. Today, joining me is our friend Daniel Wise Ojaide from Warmbox. And Warmbox is a partner of ours. And I'll mention this at the end as well. For Mucker portfolio companies, we do have a special arrangement with Warmbox with a particular discount. So welcome, Daniel Wise. I want to turn the floor over to you. So it's all yours.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you. I'm happy to be here. We're going to dive right into it. Honestly, like Tony said, this is a very important topic, very timely topic. There's a lot of buzz in the email ecosystem about what Google and Yahoo have done and are doing. But the first thing we're going to dive into is, what exactly are these new rules that Google and Yahoo are implementing? Well, there are three main rules. There are three, well, they're somewhat concise, but three main rules, and there's some branches here and there, but we'll first talk about the three main rules. The first is that email senders who are sending emails to private email addresses and private Yahoo addresses need authentication. That's the first thing. Authentication is not new to the emailing world. We're going to talk about some of the authentication protocols a little bit later through this presentation. But a lot of you email senders who have been doing this for a couple of months, a couple of years, you might have heard about some of the authentication protocols that are important. Now, Google and Yahoo are saying you must be authenticated if you want to send emails to users on their network. Now, the other thing is that if, as an email sender, you're sending more than 5,000 emails per day, so you're a bulk email sender, that's what they call it. If you've ever done up to 5,000 emails per day, and honestly, this is not just from one sender, this is from your entire organization. So this could be newsletters, prospecting emails, marketing emails, transactional emails. If everyone altogether, all the various inboxes have done up to or more than 5,000 emails from per day, then you must start including a way for your recipients to unsubscribe from your messaging. Very important. We're going to talk a little bit more about this as well. It's more stronger. It's more of a marketing requirement, but just keep that in mind. It's very important. And finally, Google and Yahoo are saying that email senders need to maintain a user complaint rate. A user complaint rate, to be very to explain this clearly, means that if a user responds to your emails by marking you as spam, that is a user complaint rate recorded. Yeah. So it's not exactly bounces or anything like that, but if someone marks you as spam, that's one complaint. And so your complaint rate right now should typically be about 0.1% or lower. But then there's a bit of a window. The maximum complaint rate that you can have as a sender is 0.3%. What that means is that if 3 people out of every 1,000 emails you send mark you as spam, you're in trouble. Yeah, so 3 is the climax. And honestly, that's a very, very tight requirement, to be honest, for email senders. But we'll talk about how to solve this in a bit. Now, there are a few other applications for these rules. Like I said earlier, Google specified, in fact, in the last couple of months, Google has removed stuff from the blog that they posted about this requirement. You know, initially they said this, and later they cleaned out a little part of it. And so the truth is that in the email ecosystem, we are still concerned that there are a few other things that could be affected by these rules, that they were not clearly stated. One of them is that email senders who are emailing businesses or who are emailing organization, schools, so pretty much like Google Workspace, Yahoo professional email addresses, example, your domain.com, which are, you know, typically what happens with B2B emailing activity. Email senders who are doing those kind of emails might also be subjected to the same spam filtering technologies and scrutiny. So pretty much the same rules that we just talked about might also apply to you. So don't only think, oh, it's only for private inboxes. If I'm emailing private inboxes, I should be concerned. If I'm emailing businesses, I don't have anything to worry about. That's not very true because Google has not been very clear. And initially, when they said that Workspace was going to be included, they later came and just quickly took it out. They might just be observing, and then they might implement this in the next couple of days. We don't know. So keep that in mind, that you are not taken out of the equation just because you're doing B2B emails. Another concern is that other email service providers, Outlook, Zoho, Yandex, there are a couple of big ESPs out there. Nothing stops them from in the following months, the following weeks, and the following years, joining Google and Yahoo to implement a similar standard for spam filtering. So that's something to also be concerned about. Other ESPs might join in this, they might join the bandwagon and also start just making sure that they're improving their spam filtering technologies, they're protecting their users. So I have seen and I read that, some people are saying, okay, what you can do now is, kind of switch and don't focus as much on Gmail or split your list. This is Gmail, this is Outlook. That might work for a while. If your recipient list, you start segregating or segmenting by ESPs, it's not a bad strategy. But what happens if in the next 1 or 2 months, Outlook says we're doing the same thing, or Zoho says we're doing the same thing, then we're all back in the same, big trouble, and we have to fix it. So keep this in mind. Changes are happening. We're not all protected. Everyone is going to be a part of this, most likely. Now, what happens if you choose to ignore these rules? The truth about this is that the things that we have just talked about, some of these rules, they've always been there. Google, Outlook, Yahoo, different ESPs have always preached about authentication. They have always talked about unsubscribed links. It's always been there. But now it's not just a nice to have, it's now a requirement. And so before you could, some email senders could get away with breaking or bending some of these rules. You could choose to do it your way now and then. But now they're putting down the hammer. If you don't go through with these rules, what will happen is, one, your email deliverability will be affected. So first of all, your emails might just start landing in spam. Nobody wants that. But that's number one. Number two, the email sender, so the email inbox responsible for breaking these rules, could be blocked. This could come with an error message saying, your email, something has happened to it, but it could be blocked. Now, the worst part is that the entire organization, this could be your entire workspace account, this could be the domain that is housing the inbox that violated these rules, that entire organization can also be blocked. So it's a big, big problem if you choose now that you're not going to take the rules seriously, because your entire organization could be affected. So keep that in mind. We can't really hide from these rules right now. Tony already mentioned this. When will the rules be affected? Google already has started. The 1st of February was the day Google stipulated. This was back in October 2023. They said 1st of February, we're getting started. There's some stipulations out there that Google has started rolling out this update or this change And probably by April, they might have fully blown this out and it might be completely functional. But Google should have started by now. Now, Yahoo was pretty unclear. They never mentioned, oh, this is the first or the second or whatever, but they said by Q1, January, February, March, we should be having the update for Yahoo. So keep in mind, it's already started. Okay, now we can talk about the main thing. What do we do now that we know that these changes are here or are soon coming? What do you do as an email sender? The very first thing would be to authenticate your domain, authenticate your accounts properly, authenticate or be burned. Right here, you can see the sender policy framework. There's DKIM or domain keys identified mail, DMARC, reverse DNS, ARC. Some of these protocols you might already be familiar with. In fact, you might have already set up some of these protocols, some of these authentication protocols for your domains. There are a few ones that might be a bit strange, but they're not completely new. I'm going to quickly go across what these mean and why they're important. Or even if you set them up, it is not a bad idea to check to make sure that they're set up properly, to check to make sure that nothing has been changed by anyone who has access to your DNS records, your DNS management center. Just ensure that these are set up. For Sender Policy Framework, or SPF, it's a very important protocol. All SPF is about is that you as an email sender, you can list the IP addresses, the mail servers, the sending applications that are authorized to send emails from your domain. That's what SPF does. If you create an SPF record, you're pretty much saying these are the assets, the IP addresses, the mail servers, the applications that I have authorized as the owner of this domain. These are the assets that can send emails on my behalf authoritatively. And so whenever you send an email, what would happen is that the receiving email sender, the receiving email server of the recipient would do a check. They would say, okay, this IP address that this email is coming from, does it match with what so-and-so has published as an authorized asset to send emails on their behalf? If they check and the IP address doesn't match or the sending application is different from what you've authorized, they send the emails to spam. That's why it's very important. It's a simple text record. We will not talk deeply about how to go into your DNS management center and set up these things. We can always talk independently. You can contact me one-on-one. We can talk about how to do it. But what you need to know is that it's important that you do it. Because if you don't have an SPF record, receiving servers or ISPs and their spam filters cannot validate that these are the assets you have authorized to send emails from on your behalf. And if they can validate that, this email is coming from the right source, they send you to spam or they block the email entirely. So super important, SPF needs to be set up. For DKIM is just as important as SPF. Some people choose to set up SPF or DKIM. Some people set up SPF and DKIM. I encourage that you set up both. Yeah, SPF and DKIM is best. Have more than one authentication protocol available. What DKIM does is once you set up a DKIM record, you're literally publishing a key. We call it a public key. You've published a public key. What would then happen is that every email you send out will be signed with an encrypted private key. And so when your emails try to go to your recipient and they try to go through your recipient server, what will happen is that the recipient will retrieve the public key that you have published and they will try to make it match. They will say, does the public key that we already have that has been published from this domain, does it match the private key that is attached to the email that claims to be coming from this domain? If they do the matching and it works, then you've passed DKIM and your email will be routed to the inbox. If they try and it doesn't work, which is the case of if someone is pretending to be you, that means the person is a spoofer. The person is sending emails, but it's not actually coming from your domain. It's just a pretend email. Then they fail, that DKIM check and the emails are blocked or sent to spam. And so it's a super important protocol. It's not difficult to set up, but you set it up, you can ensure that you're protecting your domain from aggressors and spoofers and spammers, but also that you're giving ISPs the tools they need to validate that you are you and get your emails into the inbox instead of sending it to spam. So DKIM is very important. Reverse DNS. Reverse DNS is also super important. What reverse DNS does is that it makes sure that the sending IP address that your email claims to be coming from matches the domain that it also should be coming from. So it's just it's like a back check. It's saying, okay, sending IP 198.2.1.1. What is this IP attached to? Like, where is it coming from? Is it coming from google.com, Warmbox.ai, whatever? It does that matching, and of course, if the matching is correct, then you're authenticated. It's just a way to make sure that you don't end up landing in spam. Now, ARC or ARC is a bit of an interesting one. It's not one that is, discussed a lot out there. SPF, DKIM, DMARC are some of the most popular authentication protocols out there. Reverse DNS is also pretty popular, but ARC or ARC is not. The reason ARC is important is that if you forward emails a lot or you send emails to mailing lists, things will change with the emails. Like different parts of the emails could be changed by the intermediary servers responsible for performing this action. What ARC does is that it ensures that the authentication rights from the original email is preserved. And so through all the bypasses, we call it hops, through all the hops that happens between when you send the email to when it actually ends up with the recipient, ARC ensures that everything is recorded and the original authentication rights are preserved so that when it gets to the final recipient, that person doesn't think, this email was changed. This email is not actually coming from the main person who sent it. And so because of that, the email might fail SPF or DKIM or the DMARC check and be sent to spam. So simple understanding, ARC just ensures that when you forward your email, so your email is just hopping all over the place between different email addresses, that everything that you have set up to authenticate that email from first base, that all that is preserved until it gets to the recipient so that the recipient doesn't cancel you or mark you as a spammer. They can still see that this email was really originally sent from this address. Everything is intact. The reason that there are a few changes is because this email was forwarded a few times. It is in the right places from the right person. Yeah. Now, most people might not really have to worry about ARC because ISP set it up. So Google is setting it up, rolling it out for its own users. Outlook is doing the same thing. But if you manage your own server, if you're, like you're doing this entire thing yourself, you're managing your own server, there are some resources out there that you can read to ensure that you understand how to set up your ARC and set it up properly. You might have to, of course, contact your ISP as well and communicate, but most of us are not managing our own servers. If you are, yeah, you would have to probably look into setting this up. But for most of us, Google, Outlook, yeah, they would handle that for us. The final thing I'll mention here in terms of authentication is Google has said that if you're sending from gmail.com as your email address, you should only send from the Gmail app or from apps that actually send through Google, like apps that actually reroute the email through Google servers. Some people have been known to use SMTP servers, so they're not actually sending through Google, but when they create the email, they in the from header section of the email, they name the email like it's coming from Google, but it's an SMTP server. If you do that, you're in trouble because Google is saying, coming February, which has literally come, we are changing our DMARC policy. What that means is that they're saying any email that isn't coming from the Google server should be quarantined, should be rejected. And so if you've been using an SMTP server, which means you're not sending from Google, but then you're labeling your emails like you're coming from Google, stop doing that. You're going to be in trouble. So either just send through Google, or if you use an SMTP server, don't pretend that it's coming from Google. Use it independently. Yeah.
So question regarding that last point, Daniel White. So two parts. One only applies to gmail.com free addresses or any Google Workspace address?
It's going to be any Google Workspace. Yes. As long as you're going to be using Google servers, don't use Google servers. If you're going to use an external SMTP, don't pretend that you're using Google servers.
Okay. And what about using email clients, such as like a Microsoft Exchange, like a Outlook Exchange?
That's fine. If you're using like email clients or you're using, for example, email automation tools like a Woodpecker or an Apollo, and you send, all those emails will still route the emails from Google servers, so you're fine. Yeah, you're not pretending. You're just all those emails. If I send an email, if I create a cadence or a sequence on Apollo, or I use like HubSpot or whatever, or I even use another email client and I just find a way to connect my email so that I can receive all emails from the same client, it's fine. You're not doing anything funny. But if you use an SMTP server, that's when you should be careful.
Got it. Okay. I have one question from the audience I want to address, and then let's move on because I know there's a lot to cover, and we want to make sure we have enough time. So, one question that came in was referring to an earlier slide. You don't have to go there, but the person is asking, are these rules only applicable if you're sending out 5,000 emails and above? What if you're sending lower than 5,000 emails a day?
Great question. A lot of them are still applicable. Authentication is still applicable even if you're sending less than 5,000. To be very detailed, what Google said is that SPF and DKIM are compulsory. DMARC is optional. If you read the Google policies, DMARC is optional if you're sending less than 5K. But to be completely compliant, I recommend you set everything up. SPF, DKIM, DMARC. So to answer the question quite straight, yes, it's still important if you send less than 5,000. But there's some that are expressly for bulk senders.
Got it. And just to reiterate what you said earlier for the audience, 5,000 is encompassing everything coming from your company, not just a person. It could be from your marketing emails, could be, product related emails, could be customer success related emails, outbound, everything.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. And sometimes some people don't completely take that into account. They're thinking is everyone. Everyone
Great.
everyone's numbers are combined. Perfect. Thank you so much, Tony. Okay. Yeah. So first thing, authenticate. The second thing now is take the unsubscribe link seriously. Now, this is especially if you're a bulk email sender. If you're doing more than 5,000 emails per day, the unsubscribe link should be your friend. All the former system where you send a marketing email and then you put the unsubscribe link in very small print so people can't see it, or if someone clicks on unsubscribe, they have to log into some portal before they can sign in and then they cannot subscribe. All that has to stop. Google is saying one click unsubscribe, which means a good way to do this is you can use the list unsubscribe header. So which means that an unsubscribe link is attached to the header of your email. So people can easily unsubscribe if they don't even want to open the emails. That's a good strategy to use. Or of course, you can continue to keep it right in the body of your email with a link, but it should be super easy to unsubscribe. Again, if you're a bulk sender, this is super important. This is compulsory. If you're not a bulk sender, it is a good thing to keep in mind and a good practice that you might want to consider, but it might not exactly be compulsory for you to do it. The reason I say this is, of course, if you're doing B2B emails and you're prospecting, the goal most of the time is to look as, personal and as, just like it's a one-on-one conversation. You don't want to have links that make it look like you're doing a bulk outreach or you're doing a blast. And so in that case, of course, some people don't want to put unsubscribe links in their emails. And I would say for the most part, it can be fine. It can be okay. It's left to you to experiment with that a little bit more. Bulk senders is compulsory. If you're doing, smaller emails, experiment. Personally, I have in a recent campaign, I had an unsubscribe link put in my campaign. It was like a very conversational unsubscribe link. Like if you don't want to receive emails from me, just let me know, and then let me know text. I might not have to use let me know, but the let me know text is hyperlinked to the actual unsubscribe. And it had a very good open rate, to be honest, that it protected me a little bit more. It had a really good open rate, that campaign. But again, the point is you can choose, if you're not a bulk sender, how you want to take this. If you want to implement it, if you don't want to, how you want to implement it. I'll leave that out to you. But if you're a bulk sender, have an unsubscribe link or you'll get into trouble.
Yeah, let me jump in with a comment there because I know many of our portfolio companies at the early stages are doing a bunch of outbound. It's just part of growing and scaling as a business, right? And a lot of companies have to do that. So, as Daniel Wise mentioned, the best practice is to include an unsubscribed link. However, I think there are, I don't want to say ways around it, but there are other good practices, let's just say, that you can implement. Something that I've tried before also is if you're sending a cold email, for cold meaning never contacted someone before, they haven't opted in, right? That's just part of reality for doing outbound. Several good practices include, making sure you don't have any hyperlinks, any images, make it text-based, right? And that includes your signature. A lot of times people have a fancy email signature. Well, just make it text-based, and make it appear human, meaning a one-to-one conversation. And in that first email, for many people who are trying to do outbound prospecting, don't drive them to a link to request a demo. Just simply, or even to a link for your Calendly or calendar, scheduling. Just simply say, hey, let me know if you're interested, to see a demo. Hit reply, like reply to you, right? Because and again, I'd love to get your quick take on this, but from my experience, having a reply is a really strong signal that you're a safe sender, or it gives the email service providers, confidence that, hey, this is a good sender that we want to keep in the inbox. So making sure you have a comment that says, reply to me, getting someone to reply is one of those good practices.
Thank you so much, Tony.
Anything to add to that, Daniel Wise?
I would say it's pretty well said. Honestly, like you said, just be a bit malleable, test what works for you. The funny thing though sometimes is that or the primary goal in the end is that you want to make sure that it is very easy for people to let you know that they don't want to receive emails from you. Like it's easier for them to do that than to unsubscribe, because unsubscribe is very easy. Just to click, I'm sorry, than to mark you as spam. Marking you as spam is very easy. Just to click, tap, the click, you're gone. That negative signal hurts your reputation. So whatever you can do to make it so easy that they can say, look, don't email me anymore, but they don't mark you as spam. Do it.
Yeah. Okay. That was actually a question that just came in from an audience, which is, do you get penalized for unsubscribes, or is it only spam reports?
Spam reports.
Yeah.
Unsubscribes are fine. Unsubscribes are good. Like, it's a way to clean your list.
Yep.
A way to clean it after you should have cleaned it already. So yes, it's fine. It's fine. Yeah. But if spam complaints, that's when you get penalized. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Let's leave unsubscribe and let's go. Okay. So we've talked about authenticating, we've talked about unsubscribe. Another thing to do, and this is important, is to diversify your sending activity. Now, some people are already doing this. Some people are doing this at massive scale. I've spoken to some people who have inboxes reaching up to 1,000. But this is the strategy. The goal is to have multiple workspaces. Previously, the goal was to diversify at a domain level and at an inbox level. And we'll talk a little bit about that in the next slide. But now, given the fact that Google and Yahoo are threatening that they could even block an entire workspace, which means if you have 5 domains in a workspace and they block the workspace because of one negative sender, your entire setup is gone. You've wasted money, all that is gone. You're in trouble, you're starting from stage 1. So to make sure that you can protect yourself as much as possible, diversify. First, from the workspace level, have more than one workspace. Create 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever number you can scale to, have more than one workspace. For each workspace, have a few different domains already created. And for each of these domains, have multiple inboxes created and ready to go. Again, the reason to do this is just to make sure that if one person makes a mistake in your organization, either they, land in a spam trap, or they don't take this protocols as seriously, or their emails are not as healthy, or whatever, and they get penalized by the ISP, your entire organization doesn't fall because of it. That's the goal. So you diversify, you can protect the reputation of each of your email assets at different levels and ensure that you always have email assets ready to send your emails, do your prospecting, et cetera, et cetera. That's why this is important. So this is just an example of how to build something like this. You can scale it as big, as wide as you need to. You can, of course, depending on your budget and things, you can limit it, but this is a very important strategy.
Quick question. What's the difference between a workspace versus a domain?
Great question. So like, if you have a Google Workspace, think of it as the master account you create. You have a workspace like the master account, and then the domain is an asset that you purchase under that workspace and then you add to the workspace. So the workspace is like the house. The domain is like the room, or the domains could be like the rooms in the house. And then the email addresses could be like, if you make like small boxes or small safes in the rooms, those would be the email inboxes. So yeah. So the workspace is like the master account. which you can, of course, get with Google. You can get multiple workspaces. Similar, I believe it to be a similar model for Yahoo and other ISPs. They might just be called workspaces. And then the domains are just like assets that you purchase in your own name, Warmbox.ai or whatever.
Yeah. Okay. And then what about secondary domains versus subdomains? So, let's say for us, muckercapital.com versus muckercapital.co, CO or IO. Or,
Sales
dot, mucker.com, like what are your thoughts on separate domains versus subdomains?
Great question. For ages, email deliverability experts, we preach that you could either get a secondary domain or a subdomain. The reason still was to make sure that you can manage your reputation across different levels and protect your reputation. And in the next slide, I will explain why this is important. But because of the new changes, I would recommend sticking more to secondary domains over subdomains. So pretty much like you've explained, what a secondary domain is if my email domain is warmbox.ai, I go and I purchase warmbox.co as a secondary domain, or I purchase getwarmbox.ai as a secondary domain. I look for other domain addresses that are very close named to my actual domain so that my brand identity is preserved, but I purchase them so that I can use them specifically for a kind of email sending activity, mostly in sales, mostly prospecting. Because prospecting is risky. A lot of people get secondary domains. Again, they're completely different assets, but they look very close to your normal asset. And you purchase them so you can do prospecting. So if anything goes wrong, your normal email domain and the normal inboxes that you use for used to talk to customers, you used to send invoices, etc., all that is unaffected. That's what a secondary domain is. A subdomain follows a similar methodology. A subdomain pretty much is, instead of running your emailing activity on your root domain, which is warmbox.ai, you create a sales.warmbox.ai, or like I said, app.muckercapital.com. The subdomain in its own way branches out into a new asset. And on that plane is where you put in the inbox, Daniel@app.muckercapital.com. And so it performs its function kind of as a secondary domain, protecting the root domain from any reputation damages that could have happened to it. Yeah. And so that's, for a long time, the talk out there was, okay, get a secondary domain or get a couple of secondary domains or get a couple of subdomains, put your sales activity on those and not on your primary domain or your root domain. But now, given these changes, because of how far back ISPs are willing to, block you or execute their vengeance or their punishment, it's better that the subdomain system is kind of, just retire that. Get secondary domains, get different workspaces, and operate on that plane. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and this just ties to the previous slide. The reason this is here is because it's important to know that ISPs are monitoring your reputation across 3 levels: the inbox reputation level, the domain reputation level, and the IP reputation level. Every time an ISP like Google, whenever I say ISP, I mean like Google, Yahoo, Outlook, they're all ISPs. What they do is that they aggregate data across the inbox reputation level, the domain reputation level, and the IP reputation level. The data they aggregate across these, they use it to create what we call a sender reputation score. It's literally a score between 0 and 100 that is assigned to you as an email sender. If you have a high reputation score, your emails are more likely to land in the inbox. If you have a low reputation score, your emails are more likely to land in spam. And so the reason why we advise diversifying your assets is because, if something happens at the inbox reputation level, typically it will affect the domain and IP. But if you have a diversified asset and something happens at the inbox reputation level, there's an existing domain that is different and it's not affected. So that's the reason we preach that you diversify. Don't keep all of them together. Inbox, domain, IP are all monitored. Don't keep everything stuck with one asset. Yeah, if that makes sense. Just diversify a little, have multiple domains, diversify. Okay, we're going to quickly go out of here and then we're going to go to warm up. We've talked a little bit about all the things preceding this. And now we want to talk about a warm-up strategy. A warm-up strategy would impact your reputation and help protect you. If you're not familiar with email warming, what that pretty much is, in its simplest form is that you simulate a proper email sending relationship between you and a few other inboxes out there. Typically, what happens is that an email is sent out of your inbox to another inbox. That email, when it's received in the other inbox, it is opened, it is bookmarked. If the email lands in spam in the other inbox, it is moved out of spam, etc., etc. The goal of doing this is so that positive signals are sent to ISPs saying that emails that are triggered out of your inbox are treated positively. They are needed. They are being opened. They're being interacted with. They're being engaged with positively. ISPs use these signals to then give you a grade. You know, if you should be like the center reputation score, should it be at 100 or 90 or 80? And so the warm-up pretty much does that. It gives you a chance to simulate an activity where emails are being opened from your inboxes, they're being marked as not spam, etc., so that you have a great reputation because of all those positive signals attached to it. The reason this is here is pretty much if you're already warming up, sometimes what we have seen is out there, when people learn about email warming and they start warming up, what they do sometimes is they come and they warm up 1 or 2 inboxes or 3 inboxes. And then they leave sometimes the other inboxes on not warmed up. They just do maybe 2, 3, 4. If you want to warm up all the inboxes that you have created, like we talked about, across different domains, across different workspaces. Warm everything up. Let each inbox reputation be affected by the positive signals that will be generated as a result of the warm-up. Warm everything up. The domain will also be affected. The IPs will also be affected. So warm everything. That's why this is important and why this is here. Something else also with email warming that we would also quickly talk about is previously, before Google and Yahoo released this, new restrictions, when people performed the email warming campaigns or ran email warming campaigns or did email warming activity, what we recommended was that your warm-up emails could be about 25 to 40% of your total volume of emails. So for example, if you were going to send 100 emails per day, 100 prospecting emails a day, that's the volume you typically would like to send every day. For warm-up, you can do anything between 25 to 40%. You could do 25 emails to go along with your 100 emails a day. You could do 40 emails to go along with your 100 emails a day, and that would be fine. You didn't have to send as many warm-up emails as normal emails. But given the new changes or the new rules, it might be very important that you ramp up and send more warm-up emails in comparison to your normal emails. The reason is because warm-up emails are a guaranteed positive signal to ISPs. The more of them you have, the more your reputation can be maintained. Prospecting is naturally very difficult and is naturally very risky. When you prospect, like Tony said, you're typically sending emails to people who have never opted in to receive an email from you. The chances that you'll be marked as spam, the chances that your emails will be deleted, the chances that your emails would bounce because the email address might not even be right, those chances are very high. And so it's best to kind of gauge or cushion that effect by already simulating a lot of positive signals from your inbox through warm-up so that you're more protected. Yeah, so that's why this strategy is important.
Hey, Daniel, let's I'm cognizant of time, but I think it's very important because there are people in the audience who are not familiar with what warming up a domain or warm-up emails are. So maybe, I know you probably don't have a slide on this, but can you just briefly describe what it means to warm up a domain? What happens? What does a warm-up tool do?
Great question. Okay, so pretty much if you want to warm up your inbox or warm up your domain, you go to a more provider, and literally what happens is that you connect your inbox to that provider. And what the provider does is that every single day, the provider will send warm-up emails. What they are well-written emails that are not actually, crafted by you. Sometimes you can craft them, it depends, but they're well-written emails. You can think of them as dummy emails, but for the warm-up to be effective, they have to be scripted properly. They have to follow proper email writing and email sending practices. So they're well-written emails, and they'll be triggered every day automatically from the inbox you have connected that you want to warm up. They'll be triggered to a network of other inboxes. What then happens is that the network that receives your emails will open your emails, would bookmark your emails. If your emails land in spam, the emails of the network that receives those emails will mark it as not spam. Again, the reason that happens is so that emails that are typically sent from your inbox will look like they're being treated positively. positive signals are being sent. Positive engagement is being created between your inbox and several other inboxes out there. And that's literally what warm-up providers do. They make sure that those positive engagement exists so that your emails can receive a better reputation score by ISPs, because your emails typically are received well by recipients. That's what happens. And so typically, before you start sending emails, the best practice is you create a new domain, or you purchase a new domain, you create a couple of inboxes, you go warm it up first. You warm it up for a duration of time. This could be 3, 4, 5 weeks, 6 weeks. I like to call it the pre-warm-up. After warming it up, then you start sending your normal emails. For best practices, also encourage that while sending your normal, prospecting emails, you keep the warm-up running in the background, so that the positive signals generated by the warm-up can always cushion the effect of possible negative signals that will be generated by your actual recipients. Yeah, and I hope that answers that question.
Yes, thank you. Great.
Okay. Yes, so we've talked about all the things that you can do. Authenticate your emails, be careful when using unsubscribe link. Practice email warming, diversify your assets. All of those are very important. Now, if you start doing these things, how do you monitor and ensure that you're staying safe? There are a few things to do. Google has encouraged that every email sender who knows that they're emailing into the Google network, so your users are mostly on, using Google Workspace or using private gmail.com. Same thing with Yahoo. Monitor your activity using Google or Yahoo Postmaster. Google Yahoo Postmaster is pretty much a tool that returns reports about your IP reputation, your domain reputation, feedback loops. There's a lot of information in Postmaster. It's a free tool. Google is saying, go sign up, get Postmaster set up, and start using it to monitor the reputation of your assets, of your domain, your IP. Just go there and check. For those who don't know how you've never used Postmaster, you don't know you don't know the layout of the land and how it looks like. These are just some screenshots from Postmaster. You can see that here, IP reputation is being monitored right here. This is talking about user-reported spam that is also, reported as part of the reports you get right here on Postmaster. If you're super interested in analytics, Postmaster is a go-to, especially if your users are on the Google network. And honestly, there's probably over 60, or probably about 60% of email senders are on the Google network in the US. So the chances that you're going to have people using Google are, of course, enormously and very high. Yeah. So yeah, get Google Postmaster, monitor what's going on using that tool. It's a very great tool that you can use. Another thing that you can do to ensure that you can stay safe is keep your sending volume consistent. The reason I talk about this, and I love to talk about this, is that it is common nature for email, whether you're an SDR, you're an AE, or you're a founder and you're doing the email prospecting activity yourself, it is common nature for you to have a schedule where you send your email. So example, you might say Mondays are not great for emails. Tuesdays are when all the decision makers are around, and maybe 8 to I don't know, 10 a.m. is when they're able to talk. And then you start creating this sequence or schedule where on Mondays you do like 50 or 70 emails. Or on Tuesday, you do 50, 70 emails. But on Wednesday, you do nothing. On Thursday, you do nothing. On Friday, you do another batch. As attractive and as nice as that might sound, and as sound as setting up your email system as sound as that might sound for setting up your email system, it is not great for ISPs. Inbox service providers like Google, Outlook, and the rest of them, they don't like an undulating sending email pattern. It is better for your reputation to keep your email volumes consistent throughout a period of time. And so instead of, undulating back and forth, try to send a consistent number of emails throughout the week, throughout the month. Just keep it consistent. It's a very good, simple change you can make to protect your reputation, but it will definitely help you to stay out of spam filters right up into trouble. Another thing that you can do is that if you're a bulk email sender, you need a dedicated IP. There's a lot of buzz out there about shared IPs versus dedicated IPs. I'm going to quickly say, if you send a lot of emails, 50K emails a month, 60K emails a month, 100K emails a month, whether you're doing newsletters or whatever, get a dedicated IP. A dedicated IP pretty much means that the IP belongs to you. Every emailing activity that will be sent out from you would be recorded or used by that IP. And so the entire reputation of that IP is yours. No one else can do anything to influence the reputation of the IP to go down except you. And so if you're a bulk email sender, get a dedicated IP. If you're not a bulk email sender and you don't do a lot of volume a month, it's fine to stay on a shared IP. Literally what a shared IP is, most of us is a shared IP. If you're using Google or Yahoo as your email service provider, what they would do is that they would assign a list of IP addresses for you and to you, and they would share those IP addresses with email senders from different organizations all around the world. And typically what would happen is that if they notice that you're a great email sender, so that means the emails you send are receiving opens, clicks, and positive engagement, they will group you with other great email senders, and they will rotate a set of IPs for you guys. You guys will have clean IP addresses sending emails on your behalf. On the other hand, if they see that you're a spammer or you're sending emails like a spammer, they will group you with other poor email senders, and you will have bad IPs assigned to you, so your emails will most likely end up in spam. So if you're not a bulk sender, follow great protocols and use a shared IP, and you should be fine. But if you're a bulk, get a dedicated IP. Finally, or almost finally, we don't have a lot of time. I'm just going to mention this. Don't purchase email lists. It's not really a great activity to do this. If you want to stay safe, stay away from email lists. Something that has been said, Google has said that email addresses that have not been active in the last 2 years are going to be shut down. So Google is literally shutting down email addresses that have not been active in the last 2 years. What this means for you is that if you usually purchase lists and the vendors selling those lists are not very good at cleaning them and checking them out, what could happen is that you could purchase a list with email addresses that have been deactivated. You would run your campaign to those addresses. You would have a high bounce rate. Your email deliverability will be affected. You'll be identified as a spammer and you'll be flagged out. So don't do it. You can build your own list. You can, if you have to, you can't manually build and you need some enrichment. Yeah, use great enrichment tools out there. Apollo, ZoomInfo. They're not perfect, but they can be pretty good. Use verification tools to scrub your lists. There are a lot of them out there. Zero bounce, emailable, do some scrubbing. And also, yeah, scrub your list every now and then. Every couple of weeks, every couple of months, check and scrub and make sure that anyone who's no longer valid or no longer, they've left the organization, their email address has been closed, kick them out. Keep your list clean.
Yeah, let me add a quick comment to that. And so definitely agree, like everything, if you don't mind going back to that last slide, Daniel Weiss, definitely follow these best practices, these 4 steps. Build it into your workflow, especially for those of you who do quite a bit of sales outbound, as well as marketing emails, marketing newsletters, nurture. When I used to run all of this myself, when I used to work in-house, I make it part of my process, either like Daniel Weiss indicated in step 4, or whenever I'm about to launch a major campaign, I always scrub the lists, including my existing list. Okay, like I just want to be safe. Scrub meaning using a verification tool, like he mentioned. And I also, and I'm not sure if you cover this, I always go back to the recent emails that we've sent through our various platforms and see if there are any hard bounces. I always clean out hard bounces, because hard bounces are, inactive email addresses, and it doesn't exist, and you don't want to keep sending emails to those inboxes. So build it into your workflow, scrub, clean email your databases, both using verification tools and take out hard bounces.
Thank you, Tony. Fantastic advice. That's definitely super important. Beautiful, beautiful. So just for a summary, just to cover everything that we've talked about, in the end, real quick, first thing, set up your SPF, DKIM, DMARC records, authenticate all your domains, very important. Second, start performing. This wasn't explicitly mentioned, but this is important because if you don't have some of your SPF, DKIM, DMARC records set up properly, it might be important that you find out that you don't have them set up. And there are 2 ways to do that. You could either go directly into your DNS management settings, your DNS records, and manually check one by one each record to see, do I have an SPF? And to do that, you have to be able to recognize what an SPF record looks like, what a DKIM record looks like, what a DMARC record looks like, or you can run a test with an email deliverability tool. So on Warmbox, it's completely free to run an email blacklist or deliverability audit. You can check to see if these things are there or not. So do some of those tests. Do them every, I don't know, couple of weeks, just to make sure that everything still looks good, right? So that's important. Another thing you can do is, of course, prepare multiple domains and inboxes for emailing. We talked about that already. Diversify. Warm up your inbox on a private network. There's a discussion about grades of email warming, but that's not a discussion for now. But just make sure you're warming up your inbox on a private network. Include an unsubscribe link in your emails. Very important, especially if you're a bulk sender. And finally, you know the great email sending practices out there. Tony mentioned some of them already. We've talked about some of them. Just do your best to send like a human. Don't send emails like a machine. Send like a machine, you'll be treated like a machine. Send emails like a human. Pace yourself. Send the right emails. Put the right copy. Personalize them. Find the right list. Do all the right things. And honestly, you do these things, and these protocols or these new rules should not affect you as much. You should be fine. Yeah. I guess now it's time for questions because we have so much.
Yeah, that's great. We covered quite a bit of ground. Okay, so there are a couple questions related to the topic of consistency. So I'll group these two questions together. First question is, if you can reiterate what is the benefit of consistent email volume? So volume and consistency in terms of volume, right? So that's the topic. So what's the benefit of having consistent volume? And how do you handle, or what would you recommend for volume depending on how the cadence of the emails that are sent? For instance, perhaps a weekly email, or let's say a monthly newsletter where we do this at Mucker. We send monthly newsletters to our subscribers, and it occurs once a month. So you might get a spike, and then we don't see that many, where we don't send as many emails throughout the rest of the month. So two-part question. One, can you explain again the volume, the benefit of having consistent volume? And number two, how do you address different timing throughout the week or throughout the month?
Great questions. Great questions. For volume, the reason why it's encouraged that you send emails as consistently as possible is that the pattern spammers use to send emails have been related closely to bulking, email bulking. So spammers, they do, a bulk of, 100, 200, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. That's how they send emails. ISPs know that. And so now ISPs hate email bulking. If your activity doesn't look natural, so it doesn't look like you're using your inbox every day, especially similar set of activity. So for example, you don't exactly have to do the exact same number to the dot, like you make sure, 50, I'm done. I'm done with it. That's not the point. The point is keep the activity regular, keep it usual. Over time, if you have a new inbox, ISPs for the first couple of weeks, and this is why new inboxes do not have a reputation score. As a new sender, you purchase a domain, you buy, you create an inbox. ISPs for the first few weeks, they monitor your sending activity. They're trying to understand, how does this person send emails? What's the pattern? For those few weeks, we recommend that you slowly and gradually increase your email volume to the state you want it to get to. Slowly and gradually. It might take a few months sometimes. But once ISPs have an understanding of how you send emails, they expect consistency throughout. If you start bulking and you do, 100 on Monday, nothing on Tuesday, you start to look like a spammer. And the simplest way to say it is that ISPs would treat you that way. The spam filters would treat you like a spammer. And that's why we always recommend keep your activity constant. Slowly build and keep it constant. For the second question, it's a real case, it's a real problem. Newsletters sometimes go out once a month, once a week, things like that, and then there's a spike. What I recommend for that is segment your list. Segment your list. Break your list down into 4, 3, 5 parts. So what that means is that a set of the list always get the emails on Monday, and another set always get it on Tuesday, another set always get it on Wednesday. They still all get an email once a month or once a week, but they all get it on different days, and it's fine. But that way you can build some kind of consistency and momentum throughout the week than just trying to bulk everyone out on the same day and violate ISP best practices. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
And on that topic of segmentation, that's one of those good email sending practices that we didn't cover in this one because we were wanting to mostly cover on the technical aspects, addressing, spam policies and things like that. There are a lot of other best practices regarding email with messaging, and to what you just mentioned, Daniel Weiss, about segmentation. don't ignore the value of segmenting your list, because not only is it help you break up the volume throughout the sending volume throughout, periods of lower activity, but also it's for messaging, right? You want to send the most relevant messages to a group of people, as opposed to, a mass audience. The more segmented, or at least segments that make sense, that you can create, you can fine tune your messaging and the relevancy of your messaging. And your first step is to get into the inbox. This is what we're trying to address. And then the next step is get someone to open, actually read it, and take whatever action you want them to take. Right. So this is just the first battle, if you will, that we have to win from an email deliverability perspective. Just how do you make it into the inbox, right? So and so let's wrap up with the last steps. I know we didn't get to all the questions, but one of the questions was, can we learn more or get more reading or materials? So the good news is, if you are a Mucker portfolio company and a Mucker founder, we have a lot of content found in our founder portal under the growth playbook or growth guide section. We have a lot more resources related to deliverability, related to email validation, related to some of the best practices I mentioned about segmentation and messaging. We'll probably do a future webinar session or growth series session specifically on content. That will probably come in the next couple of months or so. So, definitely make sure that you are subscribed to receive Mucker's newsletters, and we send them once a month. And so we'll probably look into adopting the best practices that even, Daniel Wise just mentioned. But we do have, a content available for our Mucker founders. If you're not a Mucker portfolio company, again, the best way is to subscribe to Mucker's blog. We will be posting this session in its entirety without having you to sign up and fill out a form again on our blog within a week. And we will constantly update content on our public-facing blog on various topics related to growth, and most likely have additional content on email. If you do have specific questions, Daniel Wise, nice guy, he gave up, provided his email address. So if anyone has questions about this, definitely reach out to him. He's, as you can see, very knowledgeable on this particular topic. You could also reach out to me as well, especially if you're a Mucker Portco. And for future topics, email Britton at muckercapital.com if you would like, for us to address a particular area. And two things, one of them is not listed here, and people have been asking about this. The first thing that's not listed, as I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, if you missed it, we have partnered with Warmbox, and we have a special discount that Daniel was willing to offer to our Mucker portfolio company. So if you don't know where to find that, it's in either the founder portal, if you know where to navigate, or simply email Britton at muckercapital.com to take advantage of that discounted plan that Warmbox has so graciously decided to offer us. And if you're not a Mucker Portco, hey, reach out to Daniel. Maybe he'll, if you're nice to him, he'll hook you up. And then finally, as most of you know, we are an early stage VC. We also run an accelerator program. If you are a founder and are looking for additional help or funding, seed, Series A, go to mucker.com, go to our Mucker Lab Accelerator page, and I encourage you to apply. We have a rolling application basis, so there's no, we do have certain deadlines, but at any given point in time, if you feel like you're ready, or maybe if you don't feel like you're ready, but we want some more information, just go ahead and apply to our accelerator program. All right, we covered a lot. Thank you, Daniel Wise, for joining us. I hope everyone who is still with us learned a lot from the session and is walking away with some actionable tips, follow-up items to make sure that you're well suited to email success. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you at the next session. Take care.